Hello, and welcome to episode 62 of TBR, the To Be Read podcast, where we talk about the books we love and the topics that interest us. I'm Patrick Stemp, and as always, we have Michael Ronn and Jamie Maltman here. How are you guys doing?
Great, Patrick. How's it going?
Good. And we have John L. Monk joining us tonight. How are you, John?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. How are you?
Great. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, happy to be here.
And Jamie, welcome back from vacation.
Thank you.
How was your week off? Good?
Yeah, still writing, but got some good reading into me and kids. So it's my new project that will take a while, and I'll talk about it in a couple minutes.
Okay. Nice. And so tonight we don't have a topic per se, other than sort of getting to know John a little bit better, and he's written a few books that we've read, and learning some of his influences and his favorite books. And we'll start with our roundtable and talk about what we've been reading over the last week, or in Jamie's case, 2 weeks. And so why don't we start with Jamie?
Sure. So I've been I finished off. In that graphic novel binge I was on, finished off the 4th book of the Game of Thrones. So part 4 of book 1 of the series, done as a graphic novel, and that was a good finish. I enjoyed the art style, and I enjoyed, especially like I mentioned before, the little bits that they've got at the end of each one, talking about the decisions that they made and why they made them, and how the artist did this, and how he auditioned for the process. All that stuff was really cool, and the fact that it was one artist, his basically full-time gig for 2 years to do just the first book of the series, which they're at what, 5, 6 at this point.
Still take them.
So that's
still took them less time than it took George to write them, didn't it?
Right, but that's from a good script and all that side of stuff.
Sure.
So that's some pretty interesting stuff. So that was good. Continued reading the Adventure Time stuff. I think we finished number 4 and number 5 of the Adventure Time ones, written by Ryan North, who and then it was Braden Lamb and Sherry Purleen or something like that, or the artists for it. So graphic novel. But Ryan North is actually a computer science background and lives in Toronto. So I thought that was pretty cool, given that I also studied computer science at the University of Toronto, where he did his master's. So it's neat to think of someone doing a master's in computer science and now being a writer for a major properties graphic novel novelization version. So I just thought that was pretty cool, and we're loving that series. And I think the next one we just got into is called Candy Capers, because there's a whole candy kingdom, and it's like candy detectives, slightly trying to be like faux noirish stuff a little bit, and it's kind of funny how they've done that. It's pretty fun.
That sounds awesome.
And then I started into my the new reading project is what I meant, actually, not a writing project, but which is finally diving back into some serious epic fantasy. And so I did start Storm of Swords, which is book 3 of the A Song of Ice and Fire Game of Thrones series. And I think I'm 280 pages in or something like that after about a week and a half. So haven't been reading as fast, partly because we're on vacation. We get pretty tired after lots of swimming and stuff. But it's really good. And a lot of people call that one the best in the series. So I'm really enjoying it so far. And so 280 pages is a quarter of the book, or not quite. So I'll be at this for probably this month if I don't pick up the pace a little bit. So we'll see. But I'm really enjoying it. And it's been fun to get back, that immersed into a world. And the neat thing, too, is I've been trying to get my wife to read the first, the graphic novels that I have out there. So just sort of introducing her to the characters and stuff has been pretty neat, too. Once you get past the Children in Jeopardy stuff that happens pretty early on that she wasn't too keen on.
Yeah, I didn't like that either. In fact, that's why I stopped reading the Game of Thrones. I watched the show because it's quick; you get right through it.
And that graphic novel, it's 2 pages, but it's like you have incest and someone trying to kill a child.
I hate that.
50 pages in, or whatever, 70 or 100, I don't know how much, but of a 1,000-page book in the first book of a very long series, and I'm like, there's not that much that's really that in your face of these taboo topics in the rest of the series that I've read so far, 2 1/4 books. But
I could see it turning people
so
off.
Many people, it really turns a ton of people off, and I'm like, man, he did have a background on TV. Was he thinking about that aspect, or he doesn't care at all? And it's so big that really he doesn't care. But it'd be interesting to see if it would have even more fans.
If you hit people with that midway through book 3, they wouldn't care so much, right? But if you hit them with it over the head in the first 100 pages, then they're going to wonder what the rest of the book is going to be like. Yeah.
Which there's all sorts of stuff, but it's not quite that, sort of taboo. But yeah,
Yeah, but
so
who-
and that. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just who am I kidding? The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I read the whole series, and it's just like a million times worse. A million times worse than Game of Thrones. What were you saying?
That is a good series.
But it
I
also,
heard
but it comes.
they're. I think I'd heard they've hired someone to continue that series now.
Ooh, cool. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I heard something about that too. I don't remember who.
Yeah, to kind of pick up where there was 3 books, right? I think to pick up where the 3rd book left off.
Someone
you guys
who
read
was
that?
Brutal, maybe.
No, I haven't read it. It's on my list though.
It's a great series. Was that it for your reading?
Yeah, that was it, and yeah, I guess just to John's point there, it might be also that it does come out of nowhere in the way that the book is set up. Like it's like they're chatting, we're getting to know a whole bunch, a huge cast of characters, and all of a sudden, bam, this like bam, the 2 things happen all at once, and it's it is pretty shocking, and I totally can see it putting people off. But luckily, I persevered and I've liked the series more and more to this point. But then I may be getting past the point of diminishing returns, where some people say like it's not as good in book 4 or book 5 or wherever, somewhere further along the series. But book 3, I'm still smooth sailing.
Okay. What were you going to say there, John?
No, it's just that poor kid. I mean, I was not looking forward to a series where what happened to the kid, for the rest of the books. I thought it was going to be he had a different future,
Yeah.
So, how about you, John? What have you been up to lately in the world of reading?
I've been reading a lot just lately because I was going to go on the show and I hadn't been reading a lot in the last year, so I was doing homework. No, I read P.T. Hilton's amazing 3rd book. He's one of my original awesome indies. He's always on this show and everything, but you know what? He's a great writer. I read book 1 and 2 last year or whatever, and they were great, and I loved them, and I'll just praise them to death. But somewhere between book 2 and book 3, he went off to that magic place that Jim Butcher went to between his book 3 and 4, and he came back and he put just this massive amount of awesome into his book 3. It is a masterpiece, in my opinion.
And sorry, that series, I believe that is the first book in that series. Is that Regulation 19?
Yeah, it's of the Deadlock trilogy. That's what it's called. And like I said, book 1 and 2 are good. They're creepy, they're weird, they're mysterious, you're interested. And I figured out what it was. So P.T. Hilton is an incredible plotter. He writes, he's got this crazy puzzled mind, wheels turning within wheels and spinning, and he writes about time travel, which I hate time travel books because they're just nonsense. But except for PTs, it's incredible. So he manages. You know what it is I think he writes himself into all these little plot holes, and he backs himself into corners, and then he writes his way out of them. And writing his way out of them turned the story in a way that even PT didn't see coming, because he had to get himself out of the trouble if he wanted to finish his book. So I think that's what's going on to some extent. But I also pinged him and I said, hey, what happened to you? What drugs are you taking? And it turns out that he actually put more characterization, I guess, into his story. He put more humor, for sure. There's more humor in it. His characters are more lovable. The bad guy in the story, he was completely despicable for 2 books, and suddenly I want to read a whole book from this guy's perspective. I want to read every inch of his life in first-person narrative. It's not a first-person book, but that's how interested I was. I mean, that was the best part of the book, in my opinion, was just reading about the bad guy, quite honestly.
Cool.
So, I read other books, too. Did you have any questions for that? I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to make sure I was aware of, because I've read Regulation 19. I enjoyed it a lot, and then I think I have book 2 sitting on my Kindle, but you know how these things go. They move a little further down your list, and I need to move it back up so I can read that and then get to book 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth it. And book 2, don't just skip over book 2. Book 2 is great.
No.
Yeah, you will. In fact, because it's such a complicated story, you don't have to take notes while you're reading it, but you do have to pay attention. You would be completely lost if you didn't read book 2. Let me see. I also read. I'll try to quicken it. I read Yesterday Is Gone, season 1. I've never read a serial in my life. I wanted to see what these guys were capable of, and I was absolutely floored. I loved the writing. It was actually really good seeing things from their perspective. That's one of my favorite things about reading books, is that you get to sort of learn. A writer distills many of the things that they are into their story, and we can only live our lives. But when we read books, we're like almost vicariously just sort of tagging along with writers in their life and their experience. And I got a lot of that sense from Yesterday's Gone season 1. Very, very interesting. A lot of characters, but it's serial, and all the stories were good. And that's really unusual. You read an anthology by somebody, even somebody famous, and you read it, and it's not an anthology, it's a serial, but kind of read like an anthology with a lot of stories kind of going on. It's hit or miss. You might like 50% if it's a particularly well-written anthology, but I was pretty floored by this.
And that's David Wright and Sean Platt, for anyone who isn't aware of the series. I actually, you mentioned a lot of characters. That was one of the things that kind of caught me out with that series. And I think I've only read season 1. Was that you might have 4 or 5 episodes or even chapters, and then you go back to a character, and it would take me a page or two to remember who that character was, and where they were and what they were doing.
Me too.
But once you get, and I haven't continued into the series past that point, but I think it's just, I guess it's one of the problems you can have with a serial, but spend enough time with them and hopefully you start to remember their names. That's my problem, is I'm terrible with names. So I'll say, like, the head of the chapter is, okay, we're back to Dave on this chapter, and I'm like, well, who the hell's Dave? I don't remember who. Was he the dad? Was he the kid? Was he the,
There's one name in that series that you will never forget, and that is Mauricio.
Mauricio.
Mauricio? Okay, Mauricio. I say Mauricio.
Mauricio
Wolf.
I went to public school, so I say Mauricio. Let me see. The other things I read, Gotta Read It by Libby Hawker. As you can see, I wrote it down. I read it. It's like 75 pages or whatever. It's just distilled knowledge on how to sell your books or pitch your books. Because I've been trying to work on some of my blurbs, for example, which she calls product descriptions, and she's correct. What else? Let me see. This year I read. I'll just rattle them off. The Art of War of Art, Turning Pro. These are both by Stephen Pressfield. This thumbs up are there for a reason, because they're really, really good.
So I've read The War of Art. What was the other one? Turning Pro?
Turning Pro is kind of like The War of Art. It's just a little bit more geared towards rugged stick-to-itiveness, doing the work for the work's sake, not thinking about the reward. What I sometimes call nigh self-destructive tenacity, which is, you just do the work with no expectation of ever making any money or fame or whatever it is. All those little fun things that make us go buy lottery tickets. You just do the work because the work has to be done, and that's what a pro does. And he has a funny kind of little line. I'm probably going to ruin it. It's something like, "Do you remember where you were when 9/11 happened?" And the answer, of course, is yes. And he follows up with, "You'll remember where you were the day you turned pro." See? I bet you all just got a goosebump right there. Okay. Let me see. I also read recently Demon Mania, which is a Harvey Klick's sequel to Demon Frenzy. These books, all of his books, are really, really cool. He writes really, really well. He manages to creep you out. He has great characters, and he writes in this shared universe sort of magic system that is like it's like got New Age stuff, like real New Age stuff in it, real spiritual kinds of things like Hinduism and biblical types of stuff. He's able to actually, I guess he's somewhat of a armchair scholar for this kind of stuff, and he manages to sort of weave it into his stories. And his stories are dark. And now I love the Demon Frenzy and Demon Mania, and that's why I'll buy like 200 of these books if he writes 200 more. But I would recommend that everybody who likes horror and they like a good read, like turning the pages kind of read, pick up The Bad Box, which is his standalone novel, but again with that same sort of shared universe magic system.
I was
It's
going to
really
ask you
good.
about that one because that's another one I've got sitting on my e-reader just waiting to go.
It's good. You'll like it from page one. Kind of like, yeah, I really liked The Martian, right? From page one, from the very first curse word. That's when you know a book is good, when you just like it from page one. So, yeah. I guess
I
that's
remember
it's a
seeing
big list.
Harvey's covers for those because he's got like the jeans, like the girl in jeans, like with these kind of stylized painting covers on them.
Yeah.
They keep popping up, and it's very distinctive. So.
For some reason, I don't know why
that
that
girl.
cover.
Whatever.
I don't know why, but that cover had made me think of the Uncanny Valley, that collection of short stories.
I never heard of
Yeah,
that.
the one you mentioned last
Yeah,
year.
you mentioned that,
right?
Yeah,
Let me
that's
see.
on my e-reader a while ago. But
That one's
yeah,
creepy.
you'd mentioned that. Yeah, you'd mentioned that. I don't I think it was earlier this year. It might have been.
Yeah, it was a book that I had stumbled across because it's the Uncanny Valley: Tales from a Lost Town by Gregory Miller, and I think you'd like that, John. I stumbled across it by accident, I think, because the phrase "the Uncanny Valley." I mean, I was looking it up but that's in the context of where you know how they make robots or animated characters in games where they look so human, but there's something just a little bit off that makes them disgusting.
Right.
It's called the Uncanny Valley, where there's a place where like they look more human, gross. That I'm probably doing a terrible job of explaining that. But anyway, so I came across this book, but it's about I'm going to see if I can remember this because it's been a while since I read it. A radio station runs like a contest where they have people in this little town send in letters, or in this area, send letters to them telling like interesting bits and pieces from their history, and they get all these letters from this one little town that are just creepy as hell, weird, strange things going on, and you don't find out until the end. That there's the hook, but it's a really the Uncanny Valley: Tales from a Lost Town.
Can you get an ebook?
Oh yeah, yep. That's what I had.
That is awesome. All right, that sounds really good. Okay, thanks. Well, I listen to the show. I listen to it in the car all the time.
Yeah, Anita, one of our friends has said to me before that this is the most expensive podcast she listens to. So, was that? Did you have any more books that you wanted to mention?
Just one more, just really quick. I'm reading a prototype, super secret, can't talk much about it, book by Nick Cole. It involves zombies. It's kind of like a historical account of what the aftermath of the zombie apocalypse is, and I'm about 30% in. It reads really well. There's some really kind of like misty parts that I've read, and I'm a real manly kind of guy, so I very rarely get misty. And so there you go. That's what I read this time around.
Have you read, thinking of zombies, that brings two things to my mind. A, that I need to reread World War Z because it's been too long. And B, have you read Hugh Howey's iZombie?
No, I haven't actually read any of the Hugh Howey stuff. I started Wool, and I guess I got busy or something like that. I'm sure it's wonderful. You have. I'm in fear of Hugh Howey too. But iZombie, is it pretty good?
It's disgusting and dark, and it's told from the perspective of the zombies because in that universe, when you become a zombie, you retain your consciousness. So you're basically riding around in your own head, watching yourself eat people and do terrible things, and there's nothing you can do.
Wow.
There's nothing you can do about it. It's definitely an interesting. There's some dark moments. In fact, I think his blurb says you probably shouldn't read this book, but
Wow.
it's good. I liked it.
I won't write that one down. I'm a bit squeamish, honestly. Yeah, I get scared on ghost tours. I really
yeah,
do.
this one will give you nightmares if you're squeamish. So, Michael, how's your reading week been?
It went okay. I hit some duds this week. I started a new reading schedule, so I feel like I need to be a more well-rounded reader because I feel like I can't hardly keep up with you guys sometimes, even though I read a lot in my own right. So I'm reading novels, short stories, poetry, nonfiction, and then some screenplays and graphic novels. So
All at once?
I've just been kind of alternating.
Okay.
I have a list, and I read a novel, check. Some short stories, check. Just go down the list, and then I restart. So I finished Invasion by Sean Platt and Johnny B. Truant.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the book one in the Alien Invasion series, and I liked it a lot. In fact, I would probably say, and you read it, Patrick, right?
Yep.
Okay, I would probably say Meyer Dempsey is probably my favorite Sterling and Stone protagonist. I liked him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I like Clint Gulliver too from Unicorn Western, but I like Meyer as well, and probably Kai from The Beam. I liked her too, but I think they just did a fantastic job at getting inside his head. Just nothing really to talk about that hasn't been mentioned already, but I would totally recommend that. The audiobook was good. Not my favorite Sterling and Stone audiobook, but still a solid effort from Podium. It was narrated by Ray Porter. So
Okay.
perfect voice for Meyer. Not so much for the other characters, but we talked about that last week. So I finished that. I started a graphic novel called Insomniac Cafe by M.K. Perker. Have you guys heard of that?
No.
Okay, I wouldn't expect you to. It kind of sucks. But anyway, I shouldn't say it sucks. That's not fair to the author.
It's not for you.
It's not for me. It sucked for me. Right, I have to be more objective about these things.
Insomnia Cafe.
Cafe Insomniac.
Right,
well,
because
whatever.
Cafe Insomniac is by is Mark Appel.
No,
Maybe there's another
it's
one.
not that one. It's about this guy he's a
His
rare
book is good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
this guy's a rare book collector, and apparently he gets into some weird scuffle with the government, and I just had no idea what was going on when I read it, and I finished the book and still had no idea. It was almost kind of like RASL. I just didn't. I had a hard time with it. I thought the art was pretty cool though. The characters' heads were kind of disproportionate, so this guy was kind of he's an insomniac, and
Okay, it's Insomnia Cafe.
Insomnia Cafe. Yeah.
Right, by
M.K. Perker.
Cutlacan Perker. Yeah.
Yeah, M.K. Perker. It wasn't for me, but I can understand why some people did like it. So, yeah, that one just didn't really do much for me. Read some poetry, short stories that I won't comment on. Lightspeed Magazine, Clark's World, some interesting stuff. And then I'm reading now a book by David Drake, and it's military science fiction, and it's called With the Lightnings, and it's book one in the Lieutenant Leary series. Have any of you guys heard of it?
No, is it any good?
I'm trying to think if I've ever read Drake. I mean, I know the name.
Yeah, he's pretty popular. He's famous for his military science fiction, but he's written, he's one of those that's written in all genres. He's kind of like Dean Wesley Smith and Christine Catherine Rush. I mean, he's just kind of written everything. It's basically, I guess I would call it it's like a military space opera. The main character, he's the son of a political magnate, and there's these political disputes going on in this star system, and he's kind of sent as a tag-along to help with a diplomatic unit to try to get some peace on this planet that's just gone through a coup. And that's about as far as I am so far in the book. So I will say it is very Pulp Fiction-y. I guess if you guys have read any Pulp Fiction, it's very Pulp Fiction.
Pretty Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember the name of the publisher, and I was just looking up a different book. Because he writes for the same publisher, Bain, as you said, that John Ringo, Eric Flint, David Weber, all their covers are like that. A Bain book when you're looking at it.
Yeah, it's true. You really do. And this, in the writing wise, it feels like a Bain or a Pulp Fiction book too. Just it's well written, but it's definitely very heavy on the narrative. So. And the narrative isn't bad. It's just that when there's dialogue, there's not very much of it. So I think I'm just kind of waiting for it to take off. But I like the concept, and I like how he set it up so far. So I'll report back once I'm done with that.
If you want a good sort of space opera science fiction, and it's a Baen book, I mentioned David Weber there, I would read Mutineer's Moon.
Okay.
And it's a series. There's 3 books. I remember enjoying the first 2 books a great deal, and not so much the third. But even if you just read the first book in the series, it's the basic premise is like inside the moon is hiding a giant, old imperial. The moon is basically a spaceship under some rocks and dust, and it takes this astronaut inside itself and basically recruits him to be the new sort of emperor for this ages old empire that's long since fizzled out. It's pretty cool. It's an enjoyable, fun, fast read.
That sounds neat. Yeah, he was mentioning in his foreword a bunch of other authors kind of like that who are writing in that genre, and one of the ones he mentioned was Patrick O'Brien, and I can't remember the name of the series, but it's like
Master and Commander.
No, it's not Master and Commander. It's a series where it takes place. I guess he takes military science fiction and takes them into Napoleonic France, and so I guess apparently he was famous for popularizing the genre.
Well, unless it's Master and Commander is what I'm seeing here.
He wrote 20 books. Yeah.
Yeah, I could be wrong. He didn't mention the name of the series, or I guess missed it, but it sounded like a really cool premise.
I read every book, and I read the first 2 twice. They're amazing.
Cool.
But
there was a movie too, wasn't it?
There was a great movie. It was absolutely wonderful. It's like my favorite movie.
That's with not Mel Gibson, but
Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe.
The other
Russell Crowe. It was a fantastic movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you mix them up, right?
You have to read them with the dictionary, though, because he writes them as if it was from the language perspective of the people kind of living back then, which is really annoying at first, but eventually you just get used to it and you learn the words. So
that's cool. Yeah, I like what I'm reading so far, and I'm just trying to stretch myself in reading more of every genre. So every time I pick up a novel, I'm just trying to make a conscious effort to. We've got a big master list of genres. It's like 300 or something that I got from some website, and I just kind of get dizzy and put my finger down on one, and then I go grab a book that's in that genre. Yeah, so
cool.
We'll see what happens. But
just keeps on hitting erotica. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I'll read it. I'll read anything. Honestly, I mean, I'm not. As a writer, right? We have to get better, and one of the important things that all of us know is that we have to keep reading books. We can't ever stop, and so I'll read erotica. I have no problem with it. Well, will it be to my taste? Maybe not, but I'm sure there's some erotica out there that's awesome, right? Just like any genre.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my week.
Okay.
When I was 15, I picked up The Happy Hooker. I found it in a box of my grandfather's books, and I snuck it around, and I read the whole thing. It was.
So at least it wasn't the Happy Brontosaurus Hooker, right?
Well, I remember back in the day reading Anne Rice, like The Vampire Lestat, and then let's read some of her other stuff. And her other stuff back in the day was not all. It was not vampires, and I don't know that it was erotica, but she wrote some pretty racy stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my week in reading, I didn't read anything. So this is probably I've probably read less this week than I have in a long time, and honestly, it's because I've fallen into that trap of writing too much and not doing anything else. So I think I've kicked I'll probably hit about 60,000 words tonight after 3 weeks.
Nice.
Trying to get through first draft on something. So I have been reading a little bit, but I didn't finish anything. So I'm continuing to read Brian Cohen's Ted Saves the World. And I want to wrap that up because Brian's actually going to be joining us on the show in 2 weeks. And I downloaded, and so this is one that I haven't started rereading yet, but I'll bring it up because I think you guys might like it, is 1 Second After by William Forstchen. Have you heard of or read that book? Yeah, you liked it, John. So the reason I specifically picked it up this week was because it was a book pub. So it's normally probably $12 or $13 buy even on like your Kindle, but it's on sale right now for $2.99. And it's a really cool book. It's basically this sort of small mountain town. I can't remember where. I want to say Colorado, but they get hit by so they get hit by an EMP pulse that just wipes out everything in the area. Like they've got no power, and they have no idea, has the entire United States been hit? Is it the world? Who attacked us? They have no idea what's going on anywhere outside of their little mountain town. And so the story is just basically how all of their technology and the things they count on gets wiped out in 1 second, and it then follows this little community through them trying to survive. Cool. And it's a very cool read. It gets a little bit like The Stand or something. A little, there's some bad guys later on, but the general sort of theme is just following this one guy, and he's trying to help his family survive and his community. And anyway, the reason I went looking for it and to buy, and the reason this traditionally published, $13 or $14 book is on sale right now is because 5 or 6 years after the first book came out, I think it's been at least that long. It looks like next month the sequel's coming out. It's called 1 Year After.
Ooh.
So I had no idea that was coming, but it explains why they did a book pub. So I might try to get a reread of that going to refresh my memory on all the characters, because I'll definitely give the second book a try. Get it from the library.
Yeah, it's still on sale if anyone wants to grab it.
Yeah.
Nothing supernatural, by the way. It's not like The Stand in that sense.
No. It's just a straight up thriller, I guess.
Cool. And looks like the audiobook's on sale too. Have you listened to that, John?
No, I don't really do audiobooks that often.
Okay.
I'd like to try to, but it interferes with my podcast listening time. I have a giant list of podcasts on my blog, and I listen to those on the way to work every day.
That's the same as me.
Me too.
I haven't had very much luck with audiobooks. Like, although I did really enjoy the Stephen Fry reading of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but it's Stephen Fry. I mean, you can't go wrong there. But it was funny because I've been thinking just over the past couple days, if I ever meet in real life the people that I've been listening to on podcasts, James Altucher, especially because he podcasts daily, I'm going to have a hard time meeting these people because I've been listening to them at 1.5 times speed. So I have a feeling if I ever meet them, I'm going to be like, dude, why do you talk so slow? Like,
talk faster, man. Yeah.
I'm used to like just moving things along, and forget that you've been listening to them at 1.5. But I get through the podcast a hell of a lot faster doing that.
Yeah, I'm listening to my audiobooks at 3 times speed these days.
3 times.
3 times speed.
Moly.
Yeah.
Chipmunks.
At first, it's like, oh my god, how can you understand this? It's like, but it's fast. It's crazy how fast your brain adapts to it. Like now, listening at 1 speed, it's kind of weird. Like it feels like they're talking in slow motion.
I guess it would be no different really than I'd be curious to know after if you do that for a while and get your brain used to consuming the words at that speed, if you would find that your just paper book or Kindle book, your eye reading would speed up along with it, and you'd just generally be able to take the words in faster.
Yeah, it's interesting how much it changes your reading. I mean, I haven't really started listening to audiobooks for like maybe it's only been 2 or 3 months, so it definitely changes your habits really quickly, almost as fast as ebooks did, right? We all resisted ebooks at first, and now look how fast we're tearing through those. And audiobooks is the next frontier.
How does it affect your listening at that speed? How does it affect your daily interactions with real human beings? When they're talking to you, do they seem like, like they're really slow,
What interactions with human beings? What are you talking about? I don't have any of those anymore. All I do is listen to audiobooks
or your dolls
until my eyes fall out. No, I don't think it's really affected it that much. Other than people looking at me, or like my wife looking at me weird when I walk by with the audiobook going at 3 times. But it's cool.
So that's our week in reading, and we're coming up on 40 minutes, which is fine because, as I said, we don't really have a topic tonight. And John's already given us a good bunch of books that he's enjoyed, but we'll spend a few more minutes talking about like maybe some of your all-time favorite books, John, favorite authors, influences, and for those who don't know, who maybe haven't seen the post, John's the author of the Jenkins Cycle, which starts with Kick, and then Fool's Ride and Hopper House, which is coming out, I want to say Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday.
A couple days. And so I've read all three of those and enjoyed them immensely. They're great, and they're very horror with humor, dark. So I'm guessing you've got to be a fan of Stephen King, and so who are your favorites?
Oddly enough, I've read a couple Stephen King books, but I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan. I liked Misery tremendously. I loved it. Mm-hmm. I liked Pet Sematary a little, and I couldn't finish The Stand, but I think I was too young for that. My biggest influences would be anybody who writes first-person narrative really, really well, like L.E. Modesitt Jr., who is basically the Dean Koontz of fantasy. He's written so many books, and yet the only people who know who he is are just his fans. So who else? Jim Butcher. I mean, Jim Butcher can do no wrong. Sometimes on Halloween I get up in the middle of the night and I say his name 100 times in the mirror, hoping some of it will rub off on me. He's just so good.
And how many books are in that series now?
Well, like 14 or 15, I believe.
Okay.
He's going to go to 20, and I just love him. I'm going to have to. What are you going to do? So, who else?
Have you read his? Have you read his other his Roman style fantasy one?
Yeah, it's awesome. I loved it, and I wish he would continue.
I haven't gotten into it yet, and I know it's totally my wheelhouse. I have to get into that soon.
You know what's funny about that? It's called the Furies of Calderon or something like that.
That's the first one, yeah.
Yeah, I tried reading that because I like Jim Butcher so much. I couldn't get into it. It wasn't first person. It was Roman stuff. Who wants to read about Roman stuff? Then somebody told me, it's really good. You need to go back and give it a try. And I was like, well, it's Jim Butcher. I'm going to do it. And I got into it, and I couldn't put it down. It just became crack cocaine to me. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I loved it to death. So definitely recommend anything that he writes. There's another guy, you were talking about space opera, David Feintuch. He wrote Midshipman's Hope. It was there was 5 books in the series. The first one's called Midshipman's Hope. Now, David Feintuch he's dead now, it's a terrible loss, but his books, they're immortal, and I highly recommend anybody who likes space opera and doesn't mind first-person narrative, pick those up. They're good. It's all about this midshipman. Now, midshipman is a line officer, and the midshipman is like 14 years old because the way the fashion life travel works is you have to be exposed to the theta waves or whatever they're called at a young age, or you'll get cancer. Okay, if exposed to it too long. So they always start there, just kind of like the British Navy did, hundreds of years ago. They start their officers, at 12, 13, 14 years old. So here he is, this midshipman, and there's a terrible catastrophe. This is not a spoiler. That's the back of the book. There's a terrible catastrophe in space where all the line officers except for Nicholas Seaford, the midshipman, they're all killed. So he's in charge of this ship with all these grizzled veterans under his command who are undermining him, and all these terrified colonists who are, like hundreds of colonists who are going to the next place, and they're all demanding action that, we can't let this 14-year-old boy be in charge. Regulations are regulations. It's a hanging offense if you break the regulations. It's all based on the British Royal Navy. And I'm not kidding you. I read the series twice. It's really good. So anyway,
that's another one I have on my book, on my e-reader, ready, waiting to be read. The first book in the series. Yeah.
You're gonna love it. If you like any space opera, if you like any first-person narrative. So those are my big influence in in the way I write would be, in addition to Jim Butcher, would be Robert B. Parker.
Okay.
I read all of his Spencer books, and in fact, Jim Butcher, his biggest inspiration just happens to be Robert B. Parker. So now you can sort of understand why I kind of like dig these two so much, because they write the same. There's a lot of like quipping and dry humor and funny stuff. Like my books, they tend to have a lot of funny stuff, or at least some people laugh. So yeah, those are my inspirations. I'm probably hogging up the show. Go ahead.
I think it's interesting to find out who your inspirations were. Like, I need to go back and read more of the John D. MacDonald, like the Travis McGee books, because he's one that Elmore Leonard, Stephen King, all these other authors, he was their favorite author when they were sort of coming up. And that's a fun series, but I need to go back and sort of work my way through it some more. And you're not hogging the show. What's that?
What was the name of that guy, that series?
It's John D. MacDonald. It's the Travis McGee is the name of the character. Let me find the first book in the series for you here. The Deep Blue Goodbye. So they're mysteries. The first book is there's an introduction by Carl Hiaasen. So I mean, if you like Hiaasen, that's another author that I think just absolutely loves the Travis McGee series. They're like, he's one of those characters that's like used to be. I want to say again, this is why I need to reread them. I can't remember all the details, but he used to be like a cop or something, but now he's a private investigator. He basically helps people find things for money. And gets into all kinds of trouble doing it. So they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love Elmore Leonard. I mean, he's just great, and whoever his inspirations are, they got to be pretty badass. So definitely have to look into that. So
cool. Oh, sorry, I didn't see, but did somebody going to say something there?
No.
Thanks for coming on the show, John.
Oh, yeah, I loved it. I'd come on anytime you guys invite me. I mean, I don't know what dark gods at P.T. Hilton sacrificed to get on the show so much, but
he's kind of our go-to, or has been when anybody's sick or on vacation. But you're welcome back anytime, and as I said earlier, I've read Kick and Fool's Ride and Hopper House. I enjoyed them a lot. I recommend them highly to anyone, really. And actually, the other book that I need to read is Thief's Odyssey. Do you want to talk about that one just for a minute? Because it's a little bit different than your other books.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thief's Odyssey was sort of like my gift to myself, almost. I have always loved books about thieves. I love The Lies of Locke Lamora. That's another great series. I'm starting with the first book by Scott Lynch. I love movies with realistic depictions of stealing and thievery. I love people who live on the outside of society. That's what Kick is about, sort of. It's this outcast. Thief's Odyssey is a story about a guy he's a foster kid. He's living in a rich woman's mansion. She's got a bunch of other foster kids, and he wants to be the world's greatest cat burglar. Now, it's a realistically told story in the sense that, it's not like a young adult novel. There is profanity in the story. There are boobies. So anyway, he wants to be the world's greatest cat burglar. He's doing all this research. He's inspired by Bill Mason, a real cat burglar, wrote Confessions of a Master Jewel Thief, which is a great book. He basically he hones his skills while other people are going on dates and watching movies and hanging out at football games. He's at home with the lights off, flipping a cutaway safe back and forth, trying to figure out the system so that he can do this stuff, and make a lot of money. He doesn't care about money. He's not greedy. He looks at it as sort of a way to keep score. It's kind of cliche, but it's true. That's what it is. It's like the more money you have, the more you're winning. And that's it. So it's first-person narrative as well, which I like. I don't like jumping around. I think you sent out some tweet saying it was I'm a head hopper or something like that, but it's actually body hopping with kick. I think head hopping is when you jump, when it's like an omniscient perspective and you're like jumping around and you see everybody's perspective.
Yep.
Yeah, which I don't really like that much. I guess that's sort of old literary novels used to do that quite a bit.
And that was just the tweet that I shot out before the show started.
Yeah. So anyway, I like books that stay with one character.
There you go.
The good one, yeah. He's a head hopper. Get him. That's it for Thieves' Odyssey.
Cool. I'm looking forward to reading that one for sure. Are we going to see more in the Jenkins Cycle?
Am I going to see some more of that money?
Are we going to see? So there you go. If enough people buy Hopper House, maybe we'll get a book for.
It's a pre-constructed world. I don't see why I wouldn't write another book. I've got some other ideas. I gotta give myself another gift. I will say that I'm almost 99% certain that I will release a omnibus edition of the Jenkins Cycle. It kind of depends on how sales pick up or don't pick up after book 3 comes out. You know how it is. It's just tough to sell. If they don't pick up, I'll probably sell it at a discount. If they do pick up, then I don't want to cannibalize sales, and I'll probably sell it at full price and then do a promo on it at some point with BookBub or something. Because I'll just get them to do it. So, yeah.
Okay. And where's the best place for people to find you online? That would be john-l-monk.com.
That's my website. It's got a little contact sheet in there. You can see my email address. You can see the Twitter thingy. I think I got the Facebook thingy in there. Yeah, so and I love getting email from folks. It's just something to do while I'm at work and supposed to be working, so go for it. That's right, I still have to work. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks again so much for coming. It was great having you, and if you want to, we'll have to, give you a slot next time PT's trying to edge his way back onto the show.
Awesome.
Okay.
It'll be the first
Yeah. So for those listening and watching, thanks. We appreciate our viewers and our listeners. And we would also, of course, very much appreciate some ratings and reviews on iTunes. And we hope you enjoyed the show. And we will talk to you next week. Have a good week.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Happy reading and go Jays.